Ferrari might be under FIA investigation just days before Japan. And it's not because of a crash, not because of strategy, but because of a hidden version of their car that was never supposed to be seen. A B-Spec SF26, tested quietly, removed immediately, and now everyone in the paddock is asking the same question. Did Ferrari just cross the line? Because this is not a small upgrade. This is a completely different concept targeting the exact weakness that has been costing them every race. Straight line speed, energy deployment, the final meters of the straight where they are losing everything. And suddenly, this new version appears and that weakness starts to disappear. Too quickly, too precisely. And that's when teams started paying attention. Because in Formula One, when something looks too effective, it usually comes with a cost, or a risk, or a loophole. And now the FIA is watching closely. But here's the part nobody is talking about. Ferrari could still bring this to Suzuka in just days, at one of the most demanding tracks of a season, where efficiency decides everything, which means this upgrade could either put them back in the fight instantly, or get them questioned right before the lights go out. And there is one detail inside this B-Spec concept that could decide everything. Subscribe now, because what happens in Japan could change the entire season. We are just days away from Suzuka, and suddenly, Ferrari is no longer just fighting for performance. They are being watched closely, because what they showed, even for a moment, was enough to trigger questions across the entire paddock. And Suzuka is the worst possible place for this to happen. Not because of the track itself, but because of what it demands. This circuit does not forgive imbalance. It does not hide inefficiency. And it definitely does not tolerate uncertainty. Every corner flows into the next. Every straight exposes drag. Every mistake compounds. So now imagine Ferrari arriving here, not just with a new upgrade, but with a concept that might already be under scrutiny. Because after Australia and China, one thing became very clear. Ferrari is not lacking speed everywhere. They are losing it in very specific moments. At the end of the straight, right when energy deployment fades, right when the car should still be accelerating, but isn't. And that is not a small issue. That is the difference between defending and being overtaken, between attacking and falling back, between fighting for the win and settling for the podium. So Ferrari did not just bring an upgrade. They targeted that exact weakness, directly, aggressively, and maybe too effectively. Because when this B-Spec version appeared in China, even briefly, something didn't look normal. The car behaved differently, more stable on exit, stronger at the end of the straight, less vulnerable. And in Formula One, that kind of change does not go unnoticed, especially not by rival engineers, because they understand something most people don't. Performance gains are never isolated. If you gain speed in one area, you must be losing something somewhere else. Weight, drag, energy, balance. There's always a trade-off. Always. So when Ferrari suddenly looks stronger, exactly where they were weakest, the first reaction is not admiration. It is suspicion. And that is how this starts. Not with an accusation, but with a question. What did they change? How does it work? And more importantly, does it comply? Because in this new era of Formula One, the rules are tighter than ever, especially around active systems, especially around how aerodynamic elements behave, and especially around anything that adapts during the lap. Which brings us back to Ferrari, because this B-Spec concept is not just about adding performance, it is about changing behavior. How the car responds, how it manages airflow, how it transitions between corners and straights. And that is where things become sensitive, because the line between innovation and illegality is incredibly thin, and Ferrari is right on top of it. Now here is where things take a turn, because the FIA does not wait for dominance to act. They react to potential, to anything that could shift the balance too quickly, too unexpectedly. And that is exactly what this looks like. A sudden solution to a very specific problem at a very critical moment in the season. So now the situation is no longer just technical, is strategic. Do Ferrari bring this upgrade to Japan? Risk the scrutiny, risk possible intervention, risk being forced to change it at the last moment? Or do they hold back, delay it, play safe, and lose ground to Mercedes again? Because make no mistake, Mercedes is not dealing with these questions. They already solved the problem Ferrari is still chasing. They already have the efficiency, the consistency, the control. And that puts Ferrari in a very difficult position. Because now is not just about being fast enough. is about being fast enough and legal at the same time, under pressure, with entire paddock watching, and a race that could define their season, just a few days away. But here is where the situation becomes even more complicated, because this is not just about what Ferrari built. It is about how Formula One reacts when something appears that others cannot immediately understand. And history tells us something very clear. When one team finds a solution that looks too effective, the rest of the grid does not try to copy it first. They question it, they pressure it, they force it into the spotlight. And that is exactly what is happening right now. Because Ferrari did not introduce this B-Spec car in a normal way. They did not run it openly across an entire weekend. They did not commit to it in qualifying. They tested it briefly, then removed it. And that behavior alone sends a message. This is not ready to be fully exposed. Not yet. And in Formula One, timing is everything. Because we are not mid-season. We are at the beginning of a completely new regulation era. A moment where every team is still trying to understand the limits, trying to find where the rules can be stretched, and where they absolutely cannot. So when Ferrari suddenly appears with a concept that seems to fix their biggest issue, right before one of the most demanding races of the calendar, it creates tension. Not just technical tension, political tension, because now rival teams are watching every detail, every onboard, every speed trace, every movement of the car on the straight, looking for something, anything, that doesn't look normal. And this is where the FIA steps in, not as a punishment, but as control, because their job is not just to enforce rules, it is to maintain balance, to prevent one interpretation from breaking the competition too early. And Ferrari's concept has the potential to do exactly that. Now think about the pressure inside Ferrari right now. They know they are close. They know the car works in corners. They know the foundation is strong. But they also know they are losing races in a straight line. And that is unacceptable. So they push, they innovate, they take a risk, and they develop something that could finally close that gap. But in doing so, they might have stepped into a gray area. And gray areas in Formula One never stay gray for long. They become black or white, legal or illegal, allowed or banned. And that decision can come at the worst possible time. Imagine this. Ferrari arrives in Suzuka. They install the B-Spec configuration. Everything feels right. The car is faster, more efficient, more competitive. For the first time, they can actually fight Mercedes on equal terms. And then, a directive, a clarification, a last-minute interpretation of the rules. Suddenly, they have to adjust, remove elements, change settings, compromise the entire concept. And just like that, the advantage disappears. This is the risk. Not just building something powerful, but building something that survives scrutiny. Because in Formula One, the best idea is not always the fastest one, is the one that can exist without being taken away. And Ferrari right now is balancing on that edge, between breakthrough and restriction, between innovation and controversy. And all of this is about to be tested in Suzuka, where there is no time to adapt, no margin to experiment, no second chances. Everything must work immediately. Everything must be legal immediately. And everything must deliver immediately. Because if it doesn't, then Ferrari is not just losing performance. They are losing momentum at the most critical point of the season. And that leads to the final layer of this story. Because the real impact of this situation will not be seen in practice, not even in qualifying. It will be seen when the race settles, when the tires begin to fade, when energy becomes difficult to manage, when every small advantage matters. That is when we will know if Ferrari created something genius or something they were never going to be allowed to use. And now, everything leads to this moment. Not the upgrade itself, not the investigation, but what happens when both collide on track. Because there's a scenario that Ferrari is trying to avoid at all costs, and is not being slow, is being fast, and then losing it at the worst possible time. Because imagine this. Ferrari goes into Suzuka with this B-Spec concept. The car looks transformed, stronger on the straights, more competitive, closer to Mercedes than ever before. For the first time this season, they are not reacting. They are dictating the pace. And for a moment, it feels like everything worked. But then something shifts. Not in performance, in attention. Because when a car suddenly improves in the exact area where it was weakest, everyone notices. And when everyone notices, everything gets analyzed, corner by corner, straight by straight. frame by frame. And this is where the pressure becomes unbearable. Because now Ferrari is not just racing Mercedes. They are racing scrutiny. Every lap becomes evidence. Every gain becomes a question. Every advantage becomes something that needs to be justified. And that changes how a team operates. Because instead of pushing forward, they start looking over their shoulder. Now here is where things get even more intense. Because Suzuka is not just a test of speed. It is a test of stability, of trust, of whether the drivers can commit fully to the car. And if there is even the slightest uncertainty, it shows immediately. High-speed corners. No margin for hesitation. If the car behaves unpredictably, the driver lifts. And that is all it takes. One lift, one moment of doubt, and the lap is gone. Now connect that with everything Ferrari is dealing with. A new concept, a sensitive aerodynamic balance, an upgrade that changes how the car behaves, and an FIA that is watching closely. This is not a comfortable situation. This is controlled chaos. And in that environment, execution becomes everything. Because even if the concept is legal, even if it delivers performance, even if it solves the straight line issue, it still needs to work perfectly, immediately, under race conditions, across an entire stint. And that is where Ferrari has struggled, not in finding speed, but in sustaining it. Because we have already seen the pattern. Strong at the beginning, competitive in the middle,